Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of World Business Report. I'm Maryam, Moshiri. In a moment, we'll cross over live to New York, the stock exchange, and dig into those Facebook numbers. But first, President Obama is on his first state visit to Japan, and top of the agenda will be the world's biggest trade pact. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, aims to cut the cost of buying and selling goods between the US, China, Japan and other Asian countries. It's the most ambitious free trade deal on the planet. It would harmonise regulation and reduce red tape for millions of firms. 12 countries are set to sign up to the TPP. Together, they account for 2/5 of all world trade. Earlier, Linda Yu, our chief business correspondent, explained who could be the winners and losers of this deal in Japan.
The people around me in this very busy commercial heart of Tokyo, they would be among those who would be in favor of any kind of trade deal that could push forward with, for instance, dismantling some of the sectors in Japan that needs to be reformed in order to be productive. But others, such as farmers, especially rice farmers, as well as pork farmers and beef farmers, they're much more reluctant to see that sector opened. And remember, agriculture in Japan is not a big sector, but it's been protected since 1971, including with a tariff as high as 778% tax on imported rice. So it's an important group for the Japanese society. So for them, as with all trade deals, there will be some losers, even if the overall country wins.
That is Linda Yu. With me now is Yannick, Naud, Portfolio Manager at Sturgeon Capital. Yannick, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on World Business Report. We've heard from Linda Yu about Japan, who wins and who loses in Japan. But what about the US? What has the US got to gain from the TPP, from this trade pact? Well,
I mean, the extent of this agreement is so big in terms of percentage of GDP. 40% of GDP is represented by those 12 countries. So, both in US and in Japan, both the business industry are pushing for this kind of business because it will create a bigger market, and it will create a bigger market away from China, in fact, which is not part of this agreement. So it will open further trade between Peru, Chile, but Malaysia, Japan and States, Canada and so on.
I want to ask you very briefly about China actually. How is China going to feel about being left out pretty much in the cold in terms of this trade deal?
Well, China is negotiating some trade agreement with Europe, or at least trying to negotiate. China already have some bilateral agreement with a lot of those Asian countries, and we could see that China will be able to opt in further down the line. Right now, it's still very difficult for the 12 countries, and especially between US and Japan, to agree on some specific area. It's very difficult to see when it could be finished, in fact.
Of course, Japan and the US are thrashing out the finer points of the deal.
Yes.
The concessions that Mr. Obama is going to be able to offer, how likely is it the Congress will actually pass through these concessions anyway?
Well, I mean, there's two sticking points. There's a sticking point on the Japanese side on agricultural product and tariff on agricultural product. And on the US side, it's on imported car and light truck. It will be very difficult in the USA, even if the auto sector are recovering in States. It's still, we still not too long ago, it was 2008, and a lot of those companies went Chapter 11. So it needs to be very, very firm in terms of what to accept on the car industry.
Now we're seeing, obviously, Mr. Obama there being greeted very cordially in Tokyo. How likely is it, do you think, we're going to see a deal in this trip, during this trip? Because a lot of people are saying it's just not going to be wrapped up this time.
No, I mean, those talks started in 2009, so it takes very, very long for to sign this kind of agreement. I think there's one sector which is really problematic. It's agricultural. Within agriculture, in the beef industry, for example, the tariff in Japan is what, 38.5%. USA would like this tariff to go down to 0 very quickly. Japan might be able to accept it to go down to 10%, but within 20 years. So right now the gap is too large. So except if they decide to not include those specific areas into the trade in order to push forward the trade, because you have to keep in mind that there's 10 other countries waiting for Japan and USA to agree on something. Apart from that, it will be very difficult to close any deal this week.
Okay, Yannick, no, good to talk to you. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much indeed.